Hi and welcome back to the channel. Yep, I'm wearing a beanie again because we're still in lockdown, and lockdown here has got to Rick Sanchez level. This time around I'm looking at two foreign language films which you're going to want to see. One's from 1975 and the other's from 2018. Both of them are high recommends from me, and both of them are about non-human beings living amongst humanity. They're very, very different. They come from different parts of the world, but they're both deeply entertaining, each in their own way. One from 1975 is a movie called Wolf Guy, which in translated from the Japanese is actually Wolf Guy Enraged Lycanthrope. And it stars Sonny Chiba. And the moment I saw the idea of Sonny Chiba playing a kind of sort of werewolf, I was in. There was no way I wasn't going to see this movie. There was no way I wasn't going to buy the Arrow Video Blu-ray of it, which comes in a dual set with a DVD as well. So if your Blu-ray glitches, you've still got the DVD. The movie was directed by Kazuhiko Yamaguchi, who did a whole bunch of other films for Toei Studios in the 60s and 70s. Spent 10 years as an assistant director, which he said was basically going out and getting things. And then they gave him a few shots of directing films, and he became quite popular. So he definitely knows his way through 1970s Japanese exploitation cinema. Now, Wolf Guy was based on a manga from a guy called Kazumasa Hirai, who also created Tobor the Eighth Man, for those of you who remember that cartoon from the 1960s. The story's pretty simple. Sonny Chiba plays a journalist, though you never see him doing any reporting. He plays a journalist called Akira Inugami, who is the last member of a wolf clan from rural Japan, which was slaughtered by local hunters when he was a small child. This kind of parallels in some ways Sonny Chiba's backstory in the Street Fighter movies, where Tsurugi has a very similar one, but in slightly less supernatural circumstances. All you need to know is that Sonny Chiba's characters in 1970s action cinema had really sad childhoods. So Inugami's doing his journalist stuff around, it looks like Shinjuku to me, and he sees a Yakuza guy running down the street, frantic and hysterical, running off things, saying a tiger is coming after him. And they follow this guy up into an alley where something invisible tears him to shreds, and you see a lot of kind of slashing and gore effects, which are very, very 1970s Japanese style. They're the kind of Japanese equivalent of the Kensington gore you see in Hammer films. So this, of course, mystifies everybody because they see him getting slashed to pieces, but they don't see what's doing it. So Inugami decides to investigate because he's a werewolf guy, though you never actually see him turn into a werewolf. The cycle he has is that as the full moon rises, he becomes physically invulnerable, which dates back to the manga, but it's applied in a very different manner in this movie. The budget wasn't great on this one, and so Yamaguchi really had to cut corners and find imaginative ways to tell a fairly complex story about his character. And he did a very good job of it too. This movie is entertainment from start to finish. So Inugami gets arrested by police and breaks free. He's then picked up and kind of bedded by a female agent of JCIA, which is Japanese CIA in this world's universe. And then he starts investigating and finds that the source of this ghost tiger is a heroin-addicted nightclub singer who had involvement with the son of a prominent politician. The politician wanted the son to marry somebody else, a financier's daughter, so he could get funding for his next election campaign. And so he got his Yakuza mates to gang rape the woman and addict her to heroin. So her psychological hatred of them has created this ghost tiger. And so she is a very, very dangerous person to cheese off. She gets her revenge finally against all of the people who've cheesed her off. But then both she and Inugami are captured by the JCIA, who conduct medical and surgical experiments upon them both. They want to weaponize the abilities of these two supernaturally gifted human beings for their own nefarious purposes. So the JCIA brainwash the woman whose name is Mickey and weaponize her for their own purposes by basically telling her that anybody they want to attack is one of her enemies. Nasty piece of work. But Inagami cops are just as bad because they surgically tear his guts open, basically. They do some surgery on him and leave his intestines hanging out and chain him to a cell. The interesting thing is they actually show some bits of real operations while they're doing this to heighten the reality of what they're doing. But they have solarization on the surgical bits, so they're all kind of green and purple toned shots of real surgery being conducted, which they insert into the footage of Sonny Chiba having his giblets taken out. But they don't know how his power works. So on the 15th day of the lunar cycle, when the moon is full, the moonlight falls on him and all of his guts get sucked back into his body and he breaks free. He's super strong, he's invulnerable to pain and injury, and he is rather cheesed off with the JCIA. So he escapes from them successfully, helped by one of the JCIA agents, the woman who seduced him earlier on, who conveniently gets shot, and he goes up into the mountains to look at his hometown, which is now abandoned because all of the wolf clan are being killed by the local hunters. And Inagami finds an ally there and also gets hunted by the local hunters, who were expecting him to come back. There's a big battle between Inagami and the hunters, and then there's a battle between Inagami and the soldiers that the JCIA sool after him, who have a jeep, rocket launchers, grenades, and all sorts of other weapons, none of which is very effective. This movie has over-the-top 1970s action in the exploitation mode. It has gratuitous female nudity.
Dusty substances.
It has blood, guts, fighting, and Sonny Chiba at his most feral. It's a really fun film to watch. You can get it from Arrow Video as well, and here is one side of the cover. Now I've got my finger over the bit where there's a topless lady because I don't want to get demonetized for that, but I'll show you the other part of the cover. There's the other version of the cover, which I don't like as much as I like this one. He said showing it to you really quickly. As I said, it's dual DVD and Blu-ray, so that's pretty damn cool. And it's a Sonny Chiba movie that I didn't know about before I went exploring on Zavi. The movie's just great. It's got a really unusual protagonist who goes through a very much an interesting character arc, which is a little bit unusual for Sonny Chiba's oeuvre, where he starts out as a slick city journalist, cynical and with smoking cigarettes, and ends up doing a total Rambo on the JCIA. There was never a sequel made of this. There was an earlier version of the same manga story which was done by Toho Studios before Toei got the rights to it and made it into a Sonny Chiba vehicle. I haven't been able to locate a copy of the Toho movie, which I don't believe has been released on dubbed or subtitled English versions, but I'll be interested in seeing it if I could. Nonetheless, this one is really great fun and kind of at that peak of Sonny Chiba's art as a martial arts action hero. The next movie I'm going to tell you about is incredibly different. It's a Swedish movie directed by a Swedish-Iranian director, based on a story by the same guy who wrote the original story of Let the Right One In, one of the greatest vampire movies of the 21st century. It's a really slow burn, really interesting, almost a character study horror movie / fantasy called Border, also known as Gräns. I think that's how you pronounce it in Swedish. But this one you want to see. I want to know what at Cannes Film Festival in the Uncertain Regard section. It was also put up as the Swedish entry in the Best Foreign Language Film Academy Award. Didn't win, but it shows how much it was regarded in its home country. And it is really deeply disturbing and really interesting, and shows us a combination of modern day Sweden mixed with some very, very old Swedish mythology. If you're in Australia, Border is currently on SBS On Demand and will be until next year, so you can check it out that way. If you're not in Australia, you may have to hunt around for this one, but it's highly recommended. Eva Melander plays Tina, a Swedish customs officer who has a very unusual talent. As the people come in off the ferry from overseas into Sweden, she can smell fear. And so she's very, very good at being a customs officer. She can tell who's carrying contraband. The other thing is that Tina is not, by our standards, an attractive person. She has facial features and a body and hands which remind you kind of Neanderthal humanoids. But she's not. She's something else entirely, something that is deeply ingrained in Scandinavian mythology. But she doesn't know it. She was raised by a foster father. She was told that she had a chromosomal abnormality. And during the course of the film, she finds out the truth of her ancestry, of even the species she is, and the things that were done to her people in the name of science. One day Tina is at work and sees a male who looks to be the same as her. His name is Vor, and he knows a lot more about Tina and a lot more about Tina's ancestry than she does. Vor gets strip searched by the custom people, and it's found that Vor has female genitals. Now Tina lives with a guy called Roland, who is a dog breeder, and doesn't treat her very well at all. She finds sexual intercourse very painful because of her chromosomal abnormality. Tina meets Vor again, and they develop a relationship where he slowly tells her who she is, what she is, and where she came from. Then one day Tina's at work and she senses a man has some contraband on him, but she can't quite tell what it is. She smells the fear on him, and then the customs people go through his gear and they find a hidden SD card full of child pornography. This then leads Tina to help the authorities, who are amazed to discover that Tina has the ability to smell fear. And Tina helps the authorities with their investigation into the child abuse ring. That then leads Tina down a totally different path. So Tina finds out who Vor is, what Vor's business is, and how Vor sees human beings. This is a really interesting movie. It's about otherness, so that you can have parallels between non-binary people. You can have parallels between transgendered people as well. There's just so many undercurrents in this film. And Eva Melander as Tina is superb in this too. Even through the heavy makeup, the body language and the acting shows through. It's hard to act through prosthetic makeup for a lot of actors. But Eva Melander does a fantastic job on showing us who Tina is, how Tina sees the world, and how there's a profound sadness to the character as well. It's really, really interesting. There are some very horrifying parts in it. At times it feels a lot like a Scandi noir drama, but with supernatural and mythological aspects to it. And it can still be considered a horror movie in many different ways. This one's a real high recommend from me. I think it's great to see the way that other cultures view their own mythologies and reinterpret them in a modern context. White Australia doesn't have a lot of that mythology to go back to for ourselves. There are some myths and legends around White Australia, but they usually involve murder and drunkenness. So we're kind of borrowing from other cultures and enjoying other cultures, sharing what they have with us. So that's where I come from on these kind of things. And it shows that there are many, many more stories to come out of the northern part of Europe that we haven't heard yet, from a whole bunch of different storytellers, giving us something that you haven't quite seen in cinema before. So that's about it for this time around. Thank you very much for watching. As always, please consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment if you enjoyed this video. If you didn't, you're bound to tell me anyway. And you can also support the channel at patreon.com/paleocinema. I'll be back on Saturday with another video. In the meantime, look after yourselves. Stay safe. So watch some good movies, watch some bad movies. Watch some foreign language films that you're not quite sure about. And I'll catch you next time.